Thank you. The next item of business is a debate on motion 19027 in the name of Ben Macpherson on tertiary education and training, funding and governance Scotland Bill at stage 1. I would invite those members who would wish to speak in the debate to please press the request to speak buttons, and I call on Minister Ben Macpherson to speak to and to move the motion. Up to 9 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I move the motion, and I am pleased to open today's debate on the Tertiary Education and Training, Funding and Governance Scotland Bill as my first contribution to parliamentary business in my new role as the Minister for Higher and Further Education. And I thank colleagues for their kind welcomes into the brief. And I also want to pay tribute at this juncture to my predecessor, Graham Day, for his extensive work in the post and his work, including his work on this legislation. Let me also thank the Education, Children and Young People Committee for its Stage 1 report and all the individuals and organisations who contributed to it and the evidence. Their input has been invaluable. In that constructive spirit, at this point I want to emphasise that I am highly committed to undertaking my responsibilities as Minister with a very constructive approach across the Parliament and across the country. And in recent days, I've been pleased to meet with both a number of MSP colleagues and some key stakeholders about this bill, including SDS and SCC from the business community. Picking up the task of this bill, it is evident that there is strong agreement that we need to make changes in the skills landscape, including structurally. That message came through loud and clear in the evidence the committee heard, with 80% of people who responded to the bill consultation choosing reform over business as usual. Indeed, the committee's report makes clear the way we currently run and deliver apprenticeships needs to change to meet the needs of our dynamic economy, to secure investment, to achieve net zero, to enable learners to fulfil their potential and to make changes that are required as we commence the second quarter of the 21st century. Yes?
Willie Rennie.
I do welcome Ben Macpherson to his new role. When he met Liz Cameron from the Scottish Chamber of Commerce, did she express it in the way that she expressed to me that she is strongly opposed to this bill? And what did the Minister say to her in response, and did he convince her? Minister.
So my engagement with the Chambers and with Liz Cameron has been extensive over my years as an MSP, and I respect her and the organisation very much. It was great to meet with her at such an early juncture. I'm keen to listen to the business community's thoughts, reflections and ideas, not just on the bill but on the skills landscape. I note that the FSB have come out supporting the bill, so there is a different approach in the business community, amongst the business community, to the legislation. But what's clear across the business community is we need to make changes, and I want to work collaboratively with the business community as we go into the weeks and months ahead, and I'll be meeting Liz Cameron again shortly. As I said, the understanding of why we need to change is largely agreed. The considerations about how to do so is where there have been differing opinions. I respect those differing opinions, and I have appreciated listening to the reflections on this in recent days, and I'm looking forward to hearing from MSP colleagues today. What I want to make clear at the beginning is that we as well in this role and taking up my tenure, is that I will not be waiting to pass and implement this bill before seeking to take initiatives to drive forward the skills agenda, because we don't have time or the luxury of standing still. For example, I recognise the strong demand now for expansion of graduate apprenticeships and the need to make the development process faster and simpler. The Government will therefore work at pace to implement changes to how frameworks are developed, from assessing demand to shaping content. This work will start imminently in close collaboration with the universities and employers. But the bill would also ensure this streamlined process is effectively overseen by the SFC, who will be tasked with leading this. And this is, together, a good example of how and why structural changes must be considered as part of reform of the skills agenda. I take an intervention from Pam Duncan-Glancy.
Pam Duncan-Glancy.
I thank the Minister for taking that intervention, but does the Minister not also accept that University of Scotland and others have said that those changes could happen now, but that there's money associated with this bill that could be better used going into improving those changes, supporting universities to deliver those graduate apprenticeships and delivering opportunities for the young people who access them?
Minister.
I was pleased to speak with University of Scotland yesterday, and I was pleased to see their support for the bill that they issued in advance of today's debate. And I need to make some progress, but thank you. At its core, this bill intends to make impactful changes to ensure that funding goes directly to where it matters most, supporting the skills, services and innovation our economy needs to thrive. The bill is, of course, founded on James Withers' review and also considers the Audit Scotland 2022 report. Withers was informed by extensive engagement with stakeholders and made a compelling case for change. That case for change has directly shaped this bill. As a government, we've kept engagement at the heart of developing the bill, and as I said, I intend to continue this proactively. Over the summer, ministers were out and about speaking to partners about the bill and how it can be shaped by those who know the system best, including a range of trade union organisations, business organisations and others working in the economy. And listening to their views on how we can make the most of this opportunity, I'm grateful that two of the organisations, the Federation for Small Businesses, as I said, and the Scottish Trading Federation, have come out in support of the bill, as well as University of Scotland, which I mentioned, and Colleges Scotland. The SFC has also undertaken its own extensive engagement on the bill, of course, and their role in the consideration of this bill is obviously key. I want to be clear that the changes proposed in this bill would simplify the funding landscape and everything that would flow from this. The changes would require the SFC to evolve significantly in its structure, culture and role. This bill would not simply enable a merging of responsibilities, it would be a fundamental redesign of how we fund and govern tertiary education and training in Scotland. This enhanced body would lead a unified, integrated sector, one that is better aligned to the needs of learners, employers and the economy. And a key part of this will be building strong, lasting partnerships with employers. Apprenticeships must continue to reflect the needs of business and the wider economy, with significant input from and collaboration with business. And apprenticeships need to be made more accessible to young people with disabilities and others facing barriers. That's really important. And this bill also proposes putting apprenticeships on a statutory footing, which I believe is significant. At this point, I also want to address concerns expressed about the risk of diluting apprenticeship funding. Let me be clear, we are absolutely committed to continuing funding for all types of apprenticeships. We've given careful thought to protecting the apprenticeship budget. Funding provided to the SFC under the bill would only be used by the SFC for those purposes. That said, funding allocations, of course, for further and higher education and apprenticeships are, of course, set through the Scottish Budget, but we will make sure funding priorities are clear. We've also heard concerns through the process of the evidence taking on the bill about concerns about foundation apprenticeships. And I want to reassure Parliament that we greatly value the opportunities they provide. The bill makes provision for work-based learning, which largely covers what is currently delivered through foundation apprenticeships. And I am keen to work with Parliament and stakeholders to address any genuine concerns about how these provisions will work in practice. I appreciate that the committee raised reasonable and important concerns about costs in the financial memorandum, and I want to address these directly. Working closely with SDS and the SFC to refine the figures, with the latest information, I am pleased to emphasise that the upper cost estimate has reduced by around a third to around £22 million. The work is ongoing to finalise costs, but I hope the additional financial detail in the letter from my predecessor offers reassurance, and I remain committed to keeping Parliament updated as this analysis progresses.
The Minister should be starting to conclude.
We want to consider what improvements can be made to the range of different models of these vocational pathways to build on what good practice there is and protect a variety of approaches while making improvements while we can. I also want to touch, and I will do this in my closing, on SDS staff, trade union engagement, sector sustainability and governance and widening access. But in conclusion, Presiding Officer, this bill has the potential to be an important step towards simplifying and modernising the funding landscape in Scotland, and therefore I move that Parliament agrees the general principles of the bill.
Thank you, Minister. I now call on Douglas Ross on behalf of the Education, Children and Young People Committee. Up to 8 minutes, please. Mr.
Thank you
Ross.
very much, Presiding Officer, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the Education, Children and Young People Committee about our scrutiny of the Tertiary Education and Training Funding and Governance Scotland Bill. Can I also take this opportunity to warmly welcome Ben McPherson to his new ministerial role and to thank Graham Day for his many appearances before committee and his input to our work. I have to say it's quite an introduction to a new brief for the Minister, leading on a stage 1 within the first week, and he's appearing before our committee next Wednesday, and I can assure him he will receive the same warm welcome that we give all his colleagues when they come to the committee. That wasn't a joke, Klein. That was very sincere. I'd also like to thank everyone who provided evidence either in person or by responding to our call for views, as well as those who gave evidence to the Economy and Fair Work Committee on skills delivery, which also informed our report. Thanks to go to my committee colleagues for their work in this bill so far, and to our team of clerks and researchers, as well as members on the Finance and Public Administration and the Delegated Powers and Legal Reform Committees for their work. As the Minister has outlined, the Scottish Government's main objectives for this bill are to consolidate funding for the provision of apprenticeships and national training programmes, improve the operation of governance of the Scottish Funding Council, and designate private providers for student support. In terms of the aim to consolidate funding, the committee could see the benefit in streamlining funding to remove duplication and reduce bureaucracy. However, we repeatedly heard concerns about a potential reduction in the number of apprenticeships at a time when demand for many apprenticeships outstrips supply. Several contributors also pointed out the lack of growth in the SFC's administered graduate apprenticeship scheme in recent years. Now, in response, we heard from the then Minister, Graham Day, that apprenticeship funding will continue to be prioritised in the future, and that's been reiterated by the Minister today. But we did urge the Scottish Government to provide more detail on this to the sector, to provide the reassurance that they evidently need. The Minister stressed that the current system needs to be improved in terms of the agility of modern apprenticeships, the graduate apprenticeship model, and the consistency of the vocational educational offer across the country. In his response to our report, Graham Day stated that the bill will enable an increase in the range, quality and quantity of apprenticeships and work-based learning. He said that it's the Scottish Government's intention to expand the graduate apprenticeship offer to cover a wider range of sectors and occupations. And it's welcome that this work will progress immediately, and the committee looks forward to being kept informed on the progress of this. I would say, however, it would be helpful to hear more from the new Minister about modern apprenticeships today, including the plans to develop a new delivery model and how this will be used to expand their availability. Now, the committee also heard concerns that the Scottish Funding Council does not have the expertise in modern apprenticeships or the working relationships with employers and industry. In our report, we emphasised our belief that the voice of employers in Scotland's skills system must at least be maintained, but even better, be strengthened by this bill. It will be critical for the Scottish Funding Council to have the necessary skills and knowledge to cover both its current responsibilities, which I think we all acknowledge are extensive and vast and under significant pressure, with those that will be added to the new functions of the SFC should this bill progress. We called for employers to be represented on the Council and for there to be an employer involvement in the Apprenticeship Committee of the SFC, which will be established by the bill. We therefore welcome Graham Day's determination to ensure that employer voice is enhanced by the bill. In his response to our report, he stated that the SFC is currently developing proposals for the potential role, remit and membership of the Apprenticeship Committee. And I have to say it's disappointing that we don't have more information about how that Apprenticeship Committee will work ahead of today's debate, but I do know a commitment to provide that detail ahead of stage 2, which the committee and I'm sure all MSPs will appreciate. Now, one of the most profound areas of concern for the committee was the lack of certainty around the costs involved in the bill, particularly given how significant they could be. And I understand the Minister took a number of interventions, but we had a very short period in his speech about the main issue that the committee was particularly troubled with. So I do think we would appreciate more information. I have to say there was a lack of clarity around how many staff members are to be proposed to transfer from Skills Development Scotland to the Scottish Funding Council, TUPEAN implications and, critically, what pension arrangements will be put in place. Now, the committee believes that the Scottish Government should have and could have done more work to accurately estimate the costs in advance of the bill's introduction, and we believed it was imperative that members had the accurate costings for the bill ahead of today's debate. Now, I know work has been done on this. The fact that the Minister has outlined that the costs of the bill have been reduced by a third clearly raises serious questions about how the initial costs were calculated and put forward in the financial memorandum. The committee could not get to the bottom of that during our deliberations, either with our witnesses who came along or with the Minister and his officials. And I'm not sure it's something that we as a Parliament should be celebrating, a massive reduction in the cost, because that clearly means there was a significant error in the original cost and the financial memorandum that was presented alongside this bill. So I think it is hope that the Government will reflect on that strongly, because as we are trying to determine future legislation in this place, it must be with the most accurate financial information available. I understand there were significant issues with discussions and collaboration between the Scottish Funding Council, Skills Development Scotland and officials there. But it was clear to committee members very early on that that was an issue. I believe it should also be clear to ministers, to the Scottish Government and to officials, and work could have started on that at a far earlier stage. We note the information that Graham Day provided in his response and has been reiterated by the new Minister today, that the range of potential costs have been substantially reduced, but they remain significant, and Parliament really does need more detail on this as soon as possible. So I hope the Minister doesn't think the response the committee received is the end of this matter. It's welcome progress, but we do need more detail on that going forward. But it was, Presiding Officer, because of the lack of detail about the scale of the potential costs involved in the bill as introduced, that the committee was unable to make a judgment as to the cost-benefit of making the proposed changes outlined in the bill. As such, we took the relatively unusual step as a committee on a government bill of not making a recommendation to Parliament on the general principles and to reserve our position at this point. And I am sure and certain that committee members will listen intently to the debate today with great interest as we hear how this bill may or may not progress and, if it does, to seek more information from the Government as we move into future stages. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Ross. I now call on Miles Breakers to open on behalf of the Scottish Conservatives. Up to 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. And can I welcome the Minister to his role, as I did on Tuesday, and also pay tribute and to thank Graham Day for his constructive work, cross-party and with the Education Committee on this bill, and wish him well in his new role. I'd also like to thank the organisations, many of which have provided really useful briefings ahead of today's debate. Presiding Officer, on Monday I visited Leith Academy, and I know the Minister, as a constituency member, is a regular visitor to the school as well, and I enjoyed a tour of the school and a very constructive conversation with the head teacher, Mike Irvine. I believe the Cabinet Secretary is visiting, I think, next week, or this morning. The work the school is undertaking with young people in this part of the capital, especially those young people with attendance challenges, I think is exemplary. And I was really impressed with the school's focus on both delivering positive outcomes, but also on making sure we work to realise the potential of our young people. That's why Scottish Conservatives wanted to see a radical new approach around the development of a hybrid education, to give young people the opportunity to access college and to take up apprenticeships earlier in their learning careers. And I think that's been missed from this bill, and something that I hope we can pursue at stage 2. But, Presiding Officer, when Scottish Government ministers brought forward this bill, we on these benches were open to the reasons and rationale behind the bill. And it's worth reflecting on why the Scottish Government did decide to legislate in this area, because the independent review of the skills delivery landscape by James Withers in 2023 presented the need to focus on a new vision on how we meet the challenges of a future workforce, and principally to deliver flexibility across post-school learning systems needed to achieve genuine agility and to accommodate more flexible learning for people at all stages of their lives. And I know MSPs from across the Chamber will hear about and see the opportunities which are being delivered by apprenticeship schemes every week. They are critical to the skills our economy needs now and in the future, and I believe must be protected and nurtured to not only grow and deliver more opportunities, but to make sure we continue to fund those being delivered now. And the key to success, often in the delivery of these apprenticeships, has been our fantastic college sector. James Withers, in his report, advocates a colleges and universities first approach to apprenticeships. And I agree that there is opportunities to actually do more with the college sector to deliver this. Namely, some of the concerns which the college sector have raised. There is concern that for every pound that leaves the Scottish Government, for certain key sectors in the Scottish economy, only 40 to 50% is received by the colleges and undertaken to provide training and apprenticeship contracts between Scottish Government and colleges. And also the costs which the committee, I'm sure, heard around managing agents taking significant amounts of that funding as well. So I welcome what is an opportunity to streamline and bring more money into the college sector and to deliver apprenticeships, even within the existing overall education and skills budget. Audit Scotland's yes, very briefly. Yeah.
Daniel Johnson.
I'm very grateful to the member for giving way. Is there not also a risk, though, that where some sectors might well value the delivery of the skills system through alternative provision, specifically private provision, that actually they see a reduction in the flexibility in terms of what skills funding delivers if it's given to the SFC?
Miles Briggs.
Yes, and I'll come on to that, and I think that's one of the main concerns which clearly the committee did highlight. But Audit Scotland College's 2024 report highlighted that colleges face increasing financial challenges and a lack of clarity on their role from ministers, which hinders their reform and sustainability as well. Funding has decreased in real terms since 2021, forcing colleges to cut costs and staff. And it's been well documented that under the Scottish Government, we've seen a loss of over 100,000 college places. And I've met with colleges from across Scotland who have expressed real concern around the limits which college credits are bringing to many institutions. Indeed, the waiting lists which exist for people to get into courses, which often directly mirror the skill shortages facing our local and national economies. And I believe we do need to see a review of college credits and more agile delivery of credits for courses which are clearly needed in our economy today. Net zero being one of them. We know there are many meetings taking place in the Highlands, for example, to discuss that very issue. As Colleges Scotland state in their briefing, there is nothing else on the horizon which would bring significant change to the apprenticeship landscape in particular. This needs reform, and colleges can support more people to gain apprenticeships. In the evidence the committee has taken, it did feel like the Scottish Government didn't actually have a vision for where they want to see apprenticeships in our country go. Indeed, I did feel that the bill hasn't really given a route map for how we can genuinely transform the delivery of apprenticeships across our country. Fundamentally, the government has not answered the question, what is wrong with our system that we currently deliver 25,000 apprenticeships, but last year there were at least 35 to 45,000 demanded. That's of what we know was registered. The potential loss of Apprenticeship Advisory Board, as Douglas Ross has mentioned, I think would have presented a backward step. So welcome some of the changes the government have outlined on there. But there is fundamentally nothing in the bill which focuses on the skills shortages which our national and local economies are facing. There's nothing around targets to help achieve these skill shortages, jobs and ultimately the economic growth which we hope they will drive. The significant important contribution of the private training providers also, I think, is something we need to acknowledge, especially around certification and registration services. As University Scotland also state in the briefing, the current operation of the framework approach to new graduate apprenticeship effectively prevents universities responding as well. And I welcome what the Minister, I think, outlined in more details I'm sure he'll provide to the Chamber in relation to graduate apprenticeships. That is why I agree with the concerns which Willie Rennie mentioned in relation to CBI Scotland and the Scottish Chamber of Commerce, namely that the bill presents the potential to dismantle what already works and leaves employers in the dark in relation to the future of apprenticeships and the wider workforce system. That is why, Presiding Officer, Scottish Conservatives believe the bill requires significant amendment, and we will therefore not support it at decision time this evening. The bill as drafted, I believe, is problematic, poorly costed, and fundamentally, I believe, is a missed opportunity to take forward a radical and ambitious new approach to skills in Scotland. We do, however, believe that there is an opportunity for the new Minister, and I hope he will genuinely work with MSPs from across the Chamber to try to fix this bill. He will have an open door from Scottish Conservatives to do that, but we will not be able to support this bill at decision time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Briggs. I now call on Pam Duncan-Clancy to open on behalf of Scottish Labour. Up to 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. We have a proud history in skills in Scotland. Our people are amongst the most talented in the world, and we punch above our weight when it comes to our contribution to technology, to science, to healthcare and many more. This is down to the hard work of our people, our colleges, our universities, our training providers and our employers, who work their socks off day in, day out to ensure that we are a nation of innovators, pioneers and leaders. But the truth is, they are doing this against the tide, because the government have given colleges and universities the real engines of skills and anchors in their communities a burning platform. They have failed to connect education to careers or match demand for apprenticeships with supply, and they presided over huge skills gaps whilst tens of thousands of young people are not in education, training or employment. Colleges are closing campuses, universities are shedding staff and courses, and employers cannot see where the money they pay in the levy goes when it comes to Scotland. All of this is why it's been called the burning platform. I'm happy to take the intervention.
Minister.
As I outlined in my opening remarks, there's a shared understanding that we need to make improvements across the country and across the Chamber. Does the member agree with me, and I say this in response to the previous speaker as well, that the current situation with funding is so very complicated and that we can achieve better outcomes by bringing provision together, creating coherence and collaboratively to design things out properly using industry as well as providers?
Pam Duncan-Clancy.
I welcome the Minister's intervention, and forgive me, Presiding Officer and Minister, I should have started by welcoming him to his place and congratulating him again on his new role. Of course, we would agree that making the system much easier, more flexible, more responsive is crucially important. But as many members, people who gave evidence to the committee told us, we don't need to have costly lengthy legislation, restructuring organisations with a tens of £1 million price tag to do that, money that could be better spent on the front line, delivering opportunity for all now. Presiding Officer, more than half of Scottish businesses report skills shortages. Only 1 in 6 employers in Scotland take on apprentices at all, and many say that the apprenticeships don't feel relevant in their sector and they're not available for their industry. Apprenticeships completion rates are not what they need to be either, and disabled people are not accessing them equally, and the gender imbalance persists. Meanwhile, the pipeline into degree-level work integrated learning is far too small, just over 1,000 graduate apprenticeships in 21-22, compared with over 43,000 degree-level apprenticeships elsewhere in the UK. Scotland can and must do better. So it is clear the status quo isn't working. The sector is telling us this plainly, that the system is strained and that change is needed. But the bill before us does not meet the moment. It moves responsibilities between public bodies without a convincing plan to expand capacity, no plan for school or employer pathways to be improved, it delivers no additional training places, and it won't help deal with today's pressures in classrooms, workshops and labs. If we get this wrong, projects slow, costs rise and opportunity narrows. But if we get it right, we can unlock growth, wages and living standards across Scotland. That's the choice in front of us today. So let me set out where Scottish Labour stands. We support the ambition to make the system more responsive. We share the goal of a coherent, demand-led approach that puts learners and employers first. But we cannot support a lengthy, costly rejig of quangos over delivery of opportunity now. The bill is an organisational restructure, pulling resource to the centre at a time when we should be using every pound and every ounce of focus for delivery on the ground in the regions of Scotland. Do I have time to take an intervention? Can I get that?
I give you a bit of time back, Minister.
Thank you.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and thank Pam Duncan-Clancy. It would just be helpful for me at this juncture to understand if other parties who are opposing the bill, I understand today, whether there's a determination to work with the legislation and whether the Labour Party thinks that there needs to be structural change, or does the Labour Party believe that we do not need to legislate in this area? I'd be grateful if we receive clarity on that.
Pam Duncan-Clancy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the Minister again for the intervention. We are, of course, always happy to work with members across the Chamber during the progress of any bill and improve any piece of legislation. We don't support the bill at stage one, as I'll come to describe. If the bill does pass, then of course we're prepared to work with others to look at ways to make it the best possible, as we always will try to do. Our approach on skills starts from three simple principles, and education from three simple principles. It should be industry-led, delivered in partnership with education providers. Employers must have a genuine voice in design and provision so that our education system matches the jobs of today and tomorrow. Yet the Advisory Board, as has been mentioned, a well-respected way of doing this, may or may not be wound down. We have no clarity. We have no clarity on what a replacement could be, or a coherent plan for key public sector skills gaps like they have in the NHS or in education, many of whom rely on colleges and universities to be supported to deliver the skills needed in those sectors. So we have to reform the system now. Secondly, the system must be individually focused, flexible and dynamic. But this bill doesn't do it. Learners of all ages need flexible routes that value technical and vocational learning as much as academic pathways. That means taster apprenticeships to improve matching and reducing dropout, Scottish industry standards in the senior phase so pupils can see how subject choices connect to real jobs, and a digital skills passport so employers and people can recognise skills consistently. Thirdly, our skills system must deliver opportunity. To do this, Presiding Officer, we must expand, widen access to and speed up approvals for new apprenticeship frameworks, including empowering the speedy development of more apprenticeships, including graduate level. Students want to earn and learn. They could be a faster route to solving our skills gaps, and universities are ready to innovate in them. Presiding Officer, all of this would help now, and we could do all of this now without a lengthy and costly rejig of quangos. Presiding Officer, this is time that we could be using to get people into jobs, giving employers the skills they need and money that could save colleges and universities. Colleagues, I don't doubt the intent behind consolidation, but Parliament has heard evidence that raises concerns about cost, capacity and risk during the transition, with Unison saying the proposals are fraught with risk and Unite and PCS say they weren't consulted properly. All of this, of course, led the committee to make the conclusion they couldn't make a recommendation. We need change now, Presiding Officer, urgent, practical, frontline change. This bill doesn't do it. It risks pooling resource and focus to machinery, not delivery. Scottish Labour cannot offer our support for something that won't deliver frontline, tangible change now, especially when what is at stake is to widen opportunity, close skill gaps and grow Scotland's economy. This is too important to divert time, energy and action from. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Ms Duncan-Clancy. I now call on Ross Greer to open on behalf of the Scottish Greens. Up to 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And like colleagues, can I start by congratulating the Minister on his appointment. Ben McPherson and I worked together on the Education Committee not too long ago, and I'm looking forward to working with him in his new position. And also, like colleagues, want to thank Graham Day. I'm sure that he was looking forward to the challenge of getting this bill through Parliament, but he's escaped that and now has a far more interesting challenge, I think, of figuring out how this Parliament can get through 29 bills in 66 sitting days before dissolution, so I don't envy him on that. I want to make clear from the outset that the Scottish Greens will support this bill at stage one, primarily because we are excited for the opportunities that stage two presents. Colleagues will appreciate that I do love a stage two process. I do enjoy testing the patience of conveners as I try to maximise the scope of a bill and the potential for amendments to it. But I do want to repeat the reasons that this bill has been brought in the first place, and it's that there's a misalignment and also something that's not quite been touched on yet today, a dysfunctional relationship between the Scottish Funding Council and Skills Development Scotland. So in part, this legislation is an attempt through the statute books to address a problem of culture. Now, that's a difficult thing to do, and legislating for culture is not always a good idea, but we have just been through a not dissimilar process with the Education Bill to address issues of culture and relationships at the SQA. Take Mr Johnson's
Daniel Johnson.
I'm very grateful to Ross Greer for giving way, especially so early in his contribution. I think he's right about the culture point, but would he also acknowledge some of the points that Audit Scotland highlighted in their 2022 report? about the capacity of the Scottish Funding Council and its lack of focus in terms of industry engagement. And is that a concern for him as he looks at this bill?
Ross Grew.
I'm very grateful for Mr Johnson's intervention, because it leads to exactly where I'm about to go, which is that as much as I have a lot to say about the functions and the performance of SDS and the Funding Council, I think what Audit Scotland and James Withers in his report really made clear was that the core issue here is a lack of clear leadership from the Scottish Government. If the Scottish Government was instructing these bodies to use Mr Johnson's example, engage far more effectively with industry, they would do so. These are not independent organisations. They are arms of the Scottish Government. They are public bodies. But in both of their cases, I think more so in the case of Skills Development Scotland, they have functioned far more independently than I think is actually appropriate if they are to be part of a well-aligned system across the board. In fact, I want to quote from James Withers' report. So in 417, he said, "There must be clear articulation of the areas that are a national priority. This goes beyond signalling economic transformation or net zero into specific articulation aligned to strategic policy intentions of the sectors and occupations that will be critical for their delivery and their workforce needs." What he was essentially saying there is that the Scottish Government was not providing a clear direction to either the public bodies involved or to the economy at large. And I think there are... yes, I think I've got time for that.
Yeah, I thank them very much for giving way. I mean, he's arguing that there needs to be a kind of change, and these are two arms of government. There needs to be a change of culture. Is it worth spending 22-odd million on just changing that?
Ross Grew.
I think that's a fair question for Mr Mason. I'm not entirely convinced it would cost as much as 22 million. I think there are, for example, some points around the cost in terms of redundancy payments, pensions, etc., that I think are overestimated. They're based on pessimistic assumptions of staff not paying over from one to the other. But I do think there are other opportunities that the bill presents that I'm probably now going to not have time for in my opening, but I'll come to my closing, of why I think that this is an opportunity, particularly in relation to the role of the Scottish Funding Council, the situation we've seen at Dundee University. This will be our last opportunity in this session of Parliament to look at whether there are legislative changes required in how we oversee higher and further education institutions and whether the SFC has the means to do so. But just returning to that point around government leadership, there are two documents that were opportunities in this session of Parliament to provide that leadership and that I think were missed opportunities. The first was the Purpose and Principles document for post-school education. I contributed to that. I was excited for the opportunity of that, but I think it was a missed opportunity. It just didn't provide the direction that colleges in particular were crying out for. But I think the far more fundamental issue upstream of that Purpose and Principles document was the NZET, the National Strategy for Economic Transformation. Because if government is to provide leadership to the bodies who are providing the skills and training opportunities for the kind of economy that we need, the government needs to make a decision on what kind of economy we need and what kind of economy we want. We have a document here in the National Economic Strategy that is not strategic and is not transformative because the government hasn't taken the difficult decisions to say, here are the sectors that we will prioritise. Our resources are finite. Here is where the greatest opportunity is. This is where the investment must be. That's the kind of direction that I think is ultimately required here. And Presiding Officer, I don't think that this bill is perfect. I'll come on to a whole range of reasons why in my closing and potential amendments. But I do think that even a perfect bill wouldn't be enough. There is a need for a clear economic strategy from government. There is a need for clear ministerial leadership. But the Greens will support this bill at stage 1 because we think there are opportunities to make significant improvements before we get to that final vote at stage 3. We have no fixed view on how we might vote at that stage yet, because my hope is that by that point we would be looking at a very different bill. We want to take the opportunity to add to and to change this. And I would urge colleagues to come to stage 2 with the kind of ideas and proposals that we've heard at stage 1, that we've heard both in the collection of evidence but in this debate this afternoon. This is an opportunity to get the level of alignment that we all agree is required in our skills development sector, that we know is required for our economy, and for us to get far better value for money out of what is currently being delivered. Ultimately, we're trying to meet the needs not just of our economy, but of our society at large. This bill might not be the opportunity to do that, but I think we should take it one further stage to identify whether actually this is an opportunity that we shouldn't miss out on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Greer. And I now call on Willie Rennie to open on behalf of the Scottish Liberal Democrats. Up to 6 minutes, please.
We have demands for skills that are quite incredible from a variety of different sectors who are desperate for good workers, whether it's the renewable sector, the defence sector that's going to see some significant growth, construction, housing construction, the whole range of areas that are desperate for skills. And we hear regular complaints from them on a variety of different levels that they're short of what they asked for, that there's significant or a lack of transparency, the management costs are very high, and the apprenticeship levy, many of them pay significant contributions to the apprenticeship levy and they don't feel they get the money back. So we hear lots of complaints. And that was really epitomised in the report from Audit Scotland that was very critical of both the government but also the two agencies, the SFC and SDS, criticising all about the lack of leadership on skills and its strategy and its coordination, which is why I was attracted to the Withers report. I thought it was a good report. I thought it set out a quite compelling case for the need for change. Single source of funding, simplification, the regional and national planning on skills, the career service that the Minister's predecessor was particularly passionate about. He thought actually that was the key to all of this, making sure that young people get the right advice at the right stage to make sure they're going into the right job and opportunity for training. But also the Minister took a very cautious approach after the publication of that report, trying to get those agencies behind the scenes to work together. So far, so good. And then we had the evidence sessions at the committee, and I have to say they were an utter disaster. Those who were supposed to be in favour of the reform were either lukewarm, pretty insipid, uncertain about what they were wanting. And that included the Funding Council, who were supposed to be transferring the responsibilities to. And then on the other hand, we had people who were strongly against them. Boy, were they strongly against it, passionately against it. Some of them had a spell over other people, but nevertheless, they were passionate about it. And that just set me back quite a bit. And I had to, like John Mason, I was asking significant questions. And there's several for me. One, does the SFC, the Scottish Funding Council, have the headspace? We've seen all the fires that are going on in further and higher education, with Dundee, with Perth this week, with college funding, with RAC, international student volatility, a whole lot of things that any one person, any one organisation would struggle to cope with at the best of times. So have they got the headspace to take this job on as well? The second issue is, does the SFC have as good relationships with employers as the SDS? Because whatever its flaws, the SDS, I think, is recognised as having decent relationships with employers. And is it possible to create those relationships in the same way and give confidence to the sector that those people who might be otherwise attracted to the problems in the higher education and further education world would be able to cope with? So, yes, certainly.
John Mason.
I thank the member for giving way. I mean, a lot of what he's saying is exactly what I'm thinking as well. Does he not think that when so many SDS staff transfer to SFC, that will give SFC that relationship with industry?
Willie Rennie.
It could well do. It could well do. But those staff are pretty annoyed, and I've met some of them, and they're pretty upset about how they've been treated. So we need to get them in the right headspace to be able to contribute and make that change. But that's possible. And I know the reforms of the SFC board might actually improve it as well. So there's a possibility there. And it's a possibility, which is why my response is nuanced this afternoon. So SDS do have a greater focus on employers, but they've also, it is their job to do the modern apprenticeship. So that single focus is there with the SDS. Do we want to remove that? And then we come to the costs. And it's really £22–25 million. It's a lot of money when things are tight. And, you know, it's things like pensions, 8 million, up to 8 million, IT, 4 million, restructuring, potentially up to 8.5 million, transition costs up to about £5 million. So not insignificant. I've actually only got a few more points I want to make. So quite a lot of money. Then you have to work out, in return, what are we getting? And I have challenged the number of people, the SFC, in this space to say, just give me some tangible explanations about what will improve. And I get vague answers around about articulation and simplification. But I want an example. What can't be done just now with the SDS and what will be done with the SFC? And it's all vague. And we need more than vague if we're going to spend up to £22–25 million. So I think we need to have a convincing case before, if this bill does progress, because the Greens will be voting with the SNP, so the bill will go through at this stage. So as we progress, we need to get more convincing case from those involved about what we're going to get for our money, because it is about a return on investment is what we're looking for. Does structural change deliver the big bang that we're looking for to meet all those employers' concerns that I set out at the very beginning? So it's over to the Minister to get the system in order to make sure that he can convince this chamber that all of this is worth it.
Thank you, Mr Rennie. We now move to the open debate. Backbench speeches of up to 6 minutes. I call Jackie Dunbar to be followed by Stephen Kerr. Mr Dunbar. Thank you, Presiding Officer. Firstly, as is always the case, can I thank the committee clerks, the witnesses and my fellow committee members for their work in scrutinising this bill to date. Secondly, can I welcome Ben McPherson to his new role as Minister for Higher and Further Education. And I'm looking forward to working with him to ensure that our ambition to give everyone the best start in life extends right through to college, university or an apprenticeship. And I'd also like to take the time to pay tribute to Graham Day and his work as the former Minister and pay thanks to him for all he did while he was in post. Now, I know a few folk feel that this bill is just rejigging how things work behind the scenes, as they can already see a steady stream of well-educated, well-skilled young Scots coming out of our education system. Some have even suggested that the bill before us today is a little bit boring. And can I just say to the ones that think this, that they're wrong. So often in this chamber we talk about Scotland's future. We talk about building a better country for the next generation. What we are doing today isn't just about building a future for the next generation. It's about ensuring they have the skills and knowledge to build their own future. Let's take the example of the building industry. I'll take an intervention. Daniel Johnson.
I'm very grateful to the member for giving me, but does she not demonstrate in her opening remarks exactly the problem? Because the skills system needs to become more than just young people acquiring skills entering the workforce. It needs to be about people acquiring skills who are already in work. So does she not actually demonstrate the problem with this bill, because it misses that point altogether?
Jackie Dunbar.
The bill is about college, university and apprenticeships, which encompasses everybody, not just young people. But I was just going, but sorry, I don't know. Would you like to come back in, Mr.
Daniel Johnson?
But in your opening remarks, you were referring to young people explicitly and exclusively.
Always through the chair, Jackie.
Apologies.
Jackie Dunbar.
Officer, I'm a bit at a loss at why that intervention was needed. I'm always going to speak up for young folk. So anyway, let's take the example of the building industry. Just now we have a situation where the funding to train architects and town planners come from one organisation, the Scottish Funding Council, while the folk who turn that into reality, our bricklayers, our joiners, our sparkies and so on, have their apprenticeships funded from a different organisation, Skills Development Scotland. It just makes sense to me that it should be funded by the same organisation, which is what this bill seeks to do. It will ensure that Scotland's whole education and skills system work as a single, easy-to-navigate system. That's the principle of what we want to achieve. And this is stage one of the bill, which is about agreeing principles. So that's what I'll be supporting today. And before I get any more interventions that the Education, Children and Young People Committee did not take a position on this bill, and that I'm the deputy convener of that committee, I'll just cover that off now. Let me start with the first point from the conclusion. Apprenticeships offer valuable opportunities to learners and businesses across Scotland and make a vital contribution to Scotland's economy. It is clear from the evidence the committee heard that the current approach towards administrating and delivering those apprenticeships need to be improved. So that's my starting point. And it was something that was said by so many of the folk that the committee spoke to as they offered their support or their caveated support for this bill. One reason for our committee not taking a position was over the cost-benefit of what this bill proposes. So what's changed? Well, Graham Day. In what might have been one of the final acts as Minister for Higher and Further Education, he responded to the committee's report and offered a range of assurances. For those that don't fancy reading the full 53-page letter before decision time, I'll draw out just a couple of the highlights. Firstly, the higher cost estimate has now been reduced down by about a third, and if we're basing our decision on cost-benefit, then cost makes a big difference. Getting back to the benefits, I also want to welcome the comprehensive assurances around apprenticeships. If I had time to read that section of the responses out in full, I would, but I don't think I'll have the time. The bill enables an increase in the range, quality and quantity of apprenticeships and work-based learning in Scotland. There are also commitments to working with employers and ensuring their involvement. Commitments to continuity beyond 2027 in many areas where this has been asked for, which will allow employers to make the decisions about apprenticeships now while this bill hopefully progresses. And I'm very happy to the recognition of the demand to expand graduate apprenticeships, and I'm very keen to see where that goes and what doors that opens up for not only young Scots but all Scots. So I've been convinced. Yes, I recognise that there is issues that still need to be addressed. Yet, yes, there are still question marks hanging over exactly how some things will work. Yes, this is not the finished article. But as I said earlier, the principles are sound, and today is about agreeing the general principles of this bill. The further detail and scrutiny can and will happen if the bill progresses, but this can only happen, and the benefits of this bill can only be realised if stage 1 of this bill gets passed today. So let's make that happen. Let's move forward a simpler funding system. Let's make it easier for colleges, universities and training providers to focus on what they do best, which is delivering the high quality of education and training that gives the Scottish workforce such a strong reputation. Let's get this bill to its next stage. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Mr Barr. I now call Stephen Kerr to be followed by George Adam. Mr Kerr.
Well, I also welcome Ben McPherson to his position, and I do also agree with Douglas Ross, although Ben McPherson is well liked across the chamber, as was evident the other day when we approved his appointment as a minister. I have to say that I don't envy him having to pick up this particular bill. This is not the kind of present that you want to find when you get a new job and you put your feet under the desk and open the desk, because frankly this bill is a little bit of a mess, to put it mildly. I do miss actually being on the Education, Children and Young People Committee. I really enjoyed that committee, and I particularly miss Willie Rennie's contributions. I honestly feel that he summarised the report that the committee produced rather well. It was kind of a meh, sort of a. I'm happy to give way to Willie Rennie as ever.
Willie Rennie.
Can I just say that we miss the member too from the committee?
Stephen Kerr.
I think you're supposed to tell the truth in the chamber. I really think that he's crossing a line there. But setting that aside, I think the spirit and the words that Willie Rennie conveyed when he gave his speech, it kind of covers how I feel about the bill, to be honest. I really think when you get down to it, the question has to be answered is, because of this bill and the associated costs, which you can't dismiss. I mean, we don't even really know how much this bill is going to cost. I mean, how can you possibly responsibly legislate for something that you don't even know how much it's going to cost? But the key question is, what will it improve? And if the evidence that was presented to the committee, and it would seem to be a fairly unanimous range of opinion that comes down to one thing, doesn't seem to change anything. And Jackie Dunbar, in her speech, she's not in her place, but when it came down to it, you know, if this bill doesn't empower learners or employers, and all it does is move things around and rebadge a bureaucracy, then I can't see the point of it. I really can't. So there's nothing in this that will achieve anything. And on that basis, I can't see what the principles are even. I mean, if we talk about simplification, but you don't actually simplify, what is the point of all of this? And so I'm happy to give way to the Minister.
I thank Mr Kerr for giving way, and apologies I couldn't give way to him in my opening. Does he appreciate that the intention behind the bill is to make sure that the FC will have oversight provision and will therefore be able to flex to employer and business needs in a way that the system at the moment doesn't, to be innovative across all business needs?
Stephen Kerr.
I want to see, for example, I really want to take the time I've got to talk about apprenticeships, because I really want to see a demand-led apprenticeship system in this country, because there's a crying out loud need, and that need is not being satisfied because, frankly, it is not the job of government to determine what the economy needs. It's the people that actually do the business of the economy that decide that. And that's the people that head up organisations, that head up businesses. So let's look at SDS in the time I've got left. I mean, SDS currently supports 40,000 apprenticeships, administers training programmes, and under this bill, all of that responsibility goes to the Funding Council. So what's left of SDS? I mean, why not go the whole hog? Why not just collapse SDS? If we want to simplify and reduce cost, then just do away with SDS. Find another way of taking care of what's left. I mean, I've suggested before some radical adjustments to the landscape of Scottish education. And I think there's an opportunity here that the government are blinking in front of, frankly. If you're going to talk about simplification or streamlining, you've actually got to do some of that. You can't just use the words. You've actually got to do what the words suggest that you're doing. What you end up here with is one overstretched body that I think justifiably we can ask questions about whether or not it's suitable for the task that it's being given. And then you've got another one that's completely hollowed out. Now, let's look at what other countries do. Let's properly learn about what people in other countries do, where they know what apprenticeships are all about. And the examples I would always reach to, and I'm not alone in this, I think, is Germany and Switzerland. I mean, their employers' associations actively design and update apprenticeship qualifications. They're totally embedded with the system. In England, the employers, and the levy was mentioned, and it's absolutely a bone of contention. People pay the levy in Scotland, but they don't see the money coming back into the investment that they need for their businesses and the future of our economy and apprenticeships. But in England, employers are all over the design of qualifications in relation to apprenticeships. But this bill seems to leave all of that very much in the hands of the ministers, the Funding Council. It says employers will be consulted, but they need to be more than consulted. They need to be in the driving seat. And that's what a truly demand-led system looks like. I've run out of time, which is disappointing for me, because I've got a number of questions I'd like to ask, and I will just close with these if I might. The first is, will the government ring-fence apprenticeship money? If it goes into the Funding Council pot, will it come out for apprenticeships? What about making a commitment to see that every penny that's raised in Scotland through the apprenticeship levy, which you can calculate, let's not hide behind, oh, we don't know how much it is, we know how much it is, can that money not be spent on apprenticeships and training? And why has the government rejected best practice international models? I really don't understand that. Why would you reject success stories in favour of just another version of what we've already got? And what about SMEs? Where will their voice be heard? There's learning to be had in other economies where SMEs, and the vast majority of people that work in the private sector in this country work in SMEs, where will their voice be properly heard? There's lots of questions. I can't see how anyone can vote for this bill today.
Thank you. OK, we now turn to George Adam, to be followed by Sarah Boyd. Mr Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and get the niceties over like everyone else. Thank Graham Day for his work, and Minister Ben McPherson, all the best, mate. Originally, my version of this speech was quite ragey, because there was certain individuals that gave evidence that kind of created that inner rage in me, because Willie Rennie was quite right when he said those that supported the bill were very meh, and those that were kind of against the bill were extremely kind of passionate in their reasons against it. And it was one of these individuals that created my George Smash moment almost with the speech. But Ross Greer's right, it should go to stage 2 for us to actually look at the other ideas and how we can take this forward, because I believe it does get that idea. Because this bill was supposed to declutter and tidy up and provide a better version of our skills systems. And currently we have too many ages tripping over each other, too much duplication and not enough focus on the important people, and that is those that are being trained. And I get that, and I support the government in this. And I think that's what this is all about. During stage 1 evidence, we heard from many of those involved in this sector, trying to come up with better ways of working, trying to ensure we had a process that was robust, we can deliver. And then we had Skills Development Scotland, whose views were made very plainly and painfully regarding their role with apprenticeships. Now, SDS have delivered many apprenticeships over the years, and the job they have done has been good up until now. But we have to move on, Presiding Officer, and see what we do while taking evidence at the committee. We heard from Skills Development Scotland, Damien Yates. Some may say that he had a positive story to tell us. Some may add that it was a story of delivery of key Scottish Government goals in training and skills. That, Presiding Officer, would have been a sensible way forward. It wasn't the one Mr Yates took. Mr Yates just more or less came here, rather than saying moving the staff and pensions across from the Scottish Funding Council, staff and pension costs would cost more like £30 million. Now, I don't know what fag packet that was written on the back of, but that's part of the problem with this debate and this actual bill at the moment, is who do we believe and what figures do we actually believe in this scenario? Because this is important. It's important for those that we actually represent. It's also important for those that are in the training schemes. And it's very important for those that work for Skills Development Scotland. Because even in the financial memorandum, the Scottish Government's figures are currently illustrative, if I can say it, illustrative. But somebody's figures clearly don't add up, Presiding Officer. Somebody's at it, and from what I've heard, I believe it's Mr Yates and SDS. Others may come to another conclusion. But this is important because of all the people that I've mentioned, but it's important because of the staff who have been transferred, more than 200 of them, and they deserve straight answers and not scare stories. As someone who's actually gone through a two-pay process when I worked in the real world, this isn't what you want to hear when this process is actually happening. You want to hear the clear facts. Now, I blame SDS as much for this than anyone else. Yes, I'll take the intervention.
For taking this intervention, because I think this has really been at the heart of major concerns, the amount of money which we're talking about. And I wondered whether or not he believed that the government figures should now have some sort of independent financial analysis to actually look at whether or not this is the right amount of money now, or whether or not this has just been to move this process forward.
George Adam.
I will tell the member one thing. I believe part of the problem with this has been SDS, because when you've got one organisation not playing ball and fighting for its very survival in any possible way it can, and they're not actually giving you the information you need, I think that may be the reason why the government's struggling to get the bottom line figures that we all need. So I would ask SDS to get their head together and get into the game and make sure we can deliver this, because they talk up the risks. The bill is about apprenticeships, taking them out of the hands of them and putting them into SFC. They can see their empire shrinking, SDS, and the better way to make folk nervous, what better way can you do it than to just fling out a cost of £30 million? And again, we're dealing with people's lives. We're dealing with people's livelihoods through their training and those that work in SDS. Of course, I suspect that it's a tactic from SDS, but if you can't win with principle, chuck in a scary number and hope Parliament loses its nerve. I'm not buying it. I don't believe anybody else is buying it in here, but we do need to make sure that the figures are solid. And it's not like, say, SDS themselves have a clean record, because for years they've been both referee and player, delivering training programmes whilst also shaping the system. They've handed out contracts to training providers that are also trade associations, representing employers while taking public money to train their own workforce. That's a built-in conflict. Surely that alone is a reason for some form of reform. And I have further concerns with trade associations providing training. When I ask questions regarding it, we heard that 40% of the money they receive, public money, goes back into the back-of-house costs rather than into the training itself. When you compare that to a college, where 90% of that goes into training. I have a concern with that as well. It's not right, and there must be another way of doing this. SDS Damien Yeats presents a narrative that suggests SDS are the only organisation capable of delivering apprenticeship services effectively. He then doubled down and dismissed throughout the independent Withers review as just a point of view, despite it being an extensive, credible piece of work. And can I say some of the stuff in the Withers review is the stuff that the government's already looking at: consolidating funding bodies, addressing system fragmentation, improving transparency and responsiveness, and support parity of esteem and enabling better data and outcome. And these are the things that are going to, if we get this right, deliver and make sure that we can build the economic model and ensure that we've got the right trades, the right people in the right place at the right time. So, Presiding Officer, I think we should go forward with this. There is much work to be done, particularly with the figures, but it's important we get this right and we move on.
Thank you, Mr Adam. I now call Sarah Boyatt to be followed by Paul McLennan. Ms Boyatt.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak in this debate, and I also want to start by welcoming Ben McPherson to his new post and to thank the committee and all those involved in the scrutiny of this bill for their hard work. It's critical because Scotland urgently needs an adequately funded and responsible system for post-school education and training, and our further education sector is in some cases far beyond crisis point. Whilst the aims of this bill are laudable, it's unfortunately another example of this government failing to do the heavy lifting that's required to bring forward a bill to this chamber, which allows us to answer the big questions about our future education system, the further education system our young people need to have answered. And the government has yet again brought forward legislation, as it has with the Children, Care Experiences Services Planning Bill, which fails to address the systemic issues that children and young people face in Scotland. It's absolutely shocking that 1 in 10 16 to 24-year-olds are currently not in employment, education or training, according to the Scottish Government's own figures. Now, this bill was decried by unions as fraught with risk for apprenticeships, and running those risks does nothing for those young people who are being failed by a system that does not work for them. And creating a much larger Scottish Funding Council with adequate assurances about its ability to continue functioning properly does nothing for those young people. And not only does the bill fail to deliver for young people, but at a time when further and higher education institutions are under so much pressure, the bill entirely fails to deliver the sustainability supports that the sector is crying out for. Briefly, yes.
Stephen Kerr.
Very briefly, one of the things that gets talked a lot about by the government is this so-called positive destinations. She referred earlier to the statistics around 17-year-olds and upwards. Does she believe that there needs to be some further work done to convince the government that there is actually an issue when it comes to where our young people are spending their lives and time?
Sarah Boyatt.
Absolutely. And if I think about my own portfolio, the Climate and Net Zero brief, the missed opportunities in retrofitting our homes in every single community in Scotland that young people could be leading on. There are missed opportunities and we're not seeing them actually addressed. The concerns, no thank you, the concerns led by the committee from Unite, the PCS trade union and Unison about their members being left in the dark about the ramifications of this bill are another damning indictment. We still have no clear answers about who or even how many workers would transfer between Skills Development Scotland and the Scottish Funding Council. Now, I do acknowledge the difficulties that have been presented by the Skills Development Scotland's unwillingness to produce figures. How can we honestly be expected to back a bill which fails to provide these basic and fundamental facts? And without having answered simple questions like, how many workers is this going to affect? The Scottish Government cannot seriously expect us to support this bill, because without these questions not being answered, we can't ask the bigger, better questions like, how is this bill going to enable our young people to thrive? Or how is this bill going to support Scotland's long-suffering, further and higher education workforce? A more responsive, Coherent funding system for post-school education and training is an aim that I take we share across the Chamber, and it's one the sector has long called for. But this bill does not convincingly deliver that aim, and it risks potentially making matters worse for learners and providers. If we are going to have successful apprenticeships, it's vital that the expertise of trade unions and businesses is drawn on in delivering those apprenticeships. A bill that has such an important aim must be backed up with strong stakeholder support. And if stakeholder support is heavily caveated, which is shown throughout the consultation that's been conducted on this bill, that will not truly meet the aims for students and learners now or in the future. And these are the questions this Parliament should be asking. This bill does not come anywhere close to us allowing us to do that. And that's why my colleagues in Scottish Labour cannot support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Boyack. I now call Paul McLennan to be followed by Brian Whittle. Mr McLennan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I'm glad to speak in this debate. And can I welcome Ben McPherson to his position? It's good to see him back in government. I'm going to touch on some of the briefings that we received today, but I have to say I'm a bit concerned at the Tory and Labour position on the bill. In the committee, members decided to reserve judgment on the bill, yet today they've come out against that work, and there's committee members who have come out and said that today. So work with the Minister on the bill. Don't just oppose it in terms of that, in terms of the principles. A pragmatic approach, I think, by Ross Gray and the Greens is a better approach going forward. I want to touch on one of the briefings we got, and this was from Guy Hinks from the FSB. And he's FSB Scotland Chair, and he said 1 in 5 small businesses in Scotland was forced to reduce the services they offer customers in the last year due to staff shortages. Modernising the training system in a way that encourages small employers. And this is what we're talking about. If we're here and talking about what employers are saying, this is FSB. Modernising the training system in a way that encourages smaller employers to hire apprenticeships. The hire apprenticeships has been an important step towards tackling the skills gaps, which are a big part of this problem. Mr Hinks then added, we can't afford, and these are his words, we can't afford to miss the opportunity the bill offers to ensure apprenticeships in Scotland work for the country's small businesses. So this is hearing directly from small business in terms of that. Mr Kerr made that point. This is hearing directly from small business that we should be supporting this bill at this stage. Of course we need to work. And he said that in himself. In order to do that, it's essential to listen to and learn from the experience of small employers, including those who are hesitant to take on apprenticeships. Small business is at the heart of the Scottish economy. Now, the Scottish Government is committed to streamlining and improving the frameworks for funding post-school education and skills. And obviously this bill is part of that kind of going forward. And I think it was mentioned before by the Minister at the start of this. The bill helps to ensure that the annual £3 billion investment delivers the greatest impact for Scotland's learners and young people and learners. Now, in their briefing, the Edinburgh College also believed that the bill should be supported, and therefore, after work should be expected to ensure the recommendations from their review are taken forward in full. They state, and I quote, "It's our view that perpetuating the status quo position is not an option." Now, this is obviously Edinburgh College is where East Lothian is probably the closest to in terms of that. South East region Scotland is the fastest growing in Scotland. 84% of Scotland's population growth in the next 10 years will be in Edinburgh and the south east of Scotland, with East Lothian forecast to grow by about a third. Edinburgh College state it is imperative that apprenticeship provision is expanded if we are to take advantage of the substantial economic opportunities. And it's been mentioned before by a few others, but about renewables. That's already been seen in East Lothian. Now, last year the college itself carried out its own skills survey research with the regional employers, again speaking to business. They stated the following: lack of apprenticeships places as key and key disciplines were raised as an acute skills shortage issue. Skills gaps continue to cause issues for employers across the region, with 88% of employers saying that some of their vacancies are hard to fill due to difficulties finding applicants with the required skills. Hard to fill vacancies are concerned, specialist skills or knowledge required for the role is the main things that employers are struggling to find. But there are also employers struggling to find applicants. Yeah, happy to do so.
Stephen Kerr. Just make this point to him. He's actually making the case for a demand-led or demand-sensitive system. This bill doesn't deliver that. That's the reform that we need.
Paul McLennan.
Coming back to the point, just as I mentioned, Mr Kerr, both FSB and Edinburgh College are saying that we need to support this bill at this stage. Now, there have been issues that have been raised by yourself and others, but work with the Minister. Don't oppose the bill in principle at this stage. Work with the Minister and listen to what the employers are saying and listen to what Edinburgh College is saying in terms of that as well. I also want to talk around about colleges in Scotland. And they commented, we support, and again, this is College of Scotland, we support the tertiary education and training bill because although the devil is in the detail, we see opportunities in apprenticeships being funded through the SFC, forming one collaborative funding model. So again, there's the three organisations that are coming out saying we should be supporting the bill at this particular stage. And again, I'm coming back to the position by both the Labour and the Conservative parties. You might have issues with the bill, but support it and work with the Ministry. You've heard the offer there, it's already coming on behalf of that. The bill, I think, places learners at the centre of the government's approach to the tertiary education system. And its work is needing done. Well, of course, we realise that work's needing done in terms of that. So for the first time, I think a statutory framework for apprenticeship in Scotland will be established, which introduces improvement, whilst leaving room to develop future policy with stakeholders. Now, I joined the Education Committee and missed some of the evidence that Mr Adam had talked to, but I think, again, coming back into it and listening to the discussions, again, the committee talked about reserving its judgment, and I think, and I'll come back to the point, that both the Labour Party and the Conservatives should be working in the Ministry. You've already heard the offer. In terms of that, work is already, importantly, work is already underway to invigorate career services, which I think is a really important part of it. And it obviously strengthens the skills approach with SDS and SFC. It will reform apprenticeships and improve the qualifications officer. Now, just coming on in terms, again, we've talked about attendance at the Education Committee. Claire Reid of Prosper, and again, I've worked with Claire in different roles in terms of that, emphasised the bill is an important step in the reform of the skills landscape. So again, working with employers, which Prosper engage with quite a bit, they're again supporting that. So I've talked about 4 organisations that are supporting the bill at this particular stage.
Members just winding up.
So in recognising that apprenticeships provide vital key opportunities for young people to acquire key skills, more than £100 million over this year's budget will be allocated to modern and foundation apprenticeships. President Officer, this is an important step in ensuring Scotland has the most skilled workforce that can meet the opportunities in front of us now and in coming years. Work is needed on the bill, but work with the Minister, support the bill today and work with the Minister going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr McLennan. Nicola Brian Whittle to be followed by Bill Kidd. Up to 6 minutes. Mr Whittle.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. I'm really pleased to rise to speak in this debate, and I will join others in welcoming Ben McPherson to his new position and wish him very well in very challenging times, I would suggest. Now, I've always highlighted my support for education in all its forms. I've often said that I think that education is the solution to health and welfare issues, and in fact that education is the cornerstone of every portfolio. And I absolutely believe that if we get education right, it would help pave the way to effective solutions to many of the current problems society is currently facing. Of course, Deputy Presiding Officer, I would suggest that many of these issues are created or at least exacerbated by the Scottish Government, who seem to have an inability to create policy linked to need and an inability to create policy across portfolio. If I may, the potential for apprenticeships in Ayrshire, for example, would demonstrate the point in question. In my region, there are many exciting opportunities in engineering and trades, along with all the soft skill jobs that come with these expansions. In the aerospace cluster in Prestwick Airport, every engineering company I've spoken to are desperate to expand and develop their businesses. The common stumbling block is the availability of workforce. In fact, parent company investment in these businesses cite the need to demonstrate that consistent people supply chain. Chief Executive of Ryanair flew into Prestwick to open their own training academy and met with me specifically to speak out about that recruitment prospectus. His position was that although the company's desire to expand their aircraft maintenance facility at Prestwick because of the experience of the engineering crew at Prestwick, without the sight of a workforce plan, they have also looked at other facilities across Europe. Woodward cited a similar situation, and they have made a strong case for investment in expansion at Prestwick. Access to a consistent apprenticeship pipeline is a concern. And a key point to note here is the availability of places isn't the only obstruction in the pipeline. Many businesses would welcome the opportunity to recruit more apprentices, but are hamstrung by difficulty accessing the resources needed to expand their facilities, grow their business and bring through more apprentices as a result. While the focus of this bill are reforms to the education system, it is vital we consider that to function as intended, We have to look beyond the confines of the system itself and make sure businesses are in the right position to provide those leaving the system with the destinations that they want. Another example was when Patrick Harvey was a minister. He put forward a bill to retrofit 1 million homes with heat pumps by 2030. And I kept asking him where these heat pumps would come from, who would fit and service them and who would pay for them. There was never any answer to that question, with the industry suggesting that there were 23,500 tradespeople short if they were to deliver on the government's targets. So it's no surprise that that piece of legislation was quietly slipped into the dusty shelves marked unworkable. Of course,
Rose Greer.
From taking the intervention, he says that there was no answer to that question. I presume then he didn't read the workforce strategy for the Green Heat Task Force that the government published.
Brian Whittle.
Yes, I did, and in that there was no answer to the 23,500 tradespeople that were short. The thing about it is we have actually got a fantastic tertiary education facility in Ayrshire College and the University of Western Scotland who are able and more than willing to take on these challenges. The Ayrshire College told me that they have 831 students who were successful at interview when applying for college-based programmes, including 400 in engineering, 280 in aerospace, actually, 171 in construction and trades, as well as 71 in health and social care. Deputy Presiding Officer, we desperately need those students in the workplace. And what a success story that would be if it wasn't for the fact that the college were unable to offer places to these students, in large part because of a lack of funding to deliver. I would also note here that the college does its bit in delivering for 56 students over their allocation at a cost of over £280,000 to the college. They advised that if the constraints around the contracted volumes were lifted, they are confident in the key engineering sector they can increase new starts from around 130 to over 200 starts per year. Presiding Officer, what is the government thinking here? Surely in these sectors where we're crying out for new recruits, be that through apprenticeships or training places, we should be doing everything we can to increase the intake in areas such as engineering and construction and trades, as well as that health and social care. Another piece of the jigsaw is connecting up career advice in secondary school into tertiary education that links with local opportunities. There is a disconnect here. In the engineering sector, there is a real potential for 2,500 new jobs in Ayrshire, be that mechanics, be that engineers, and all the soft skills that an expansion demands. Prestwick Cluster, along with XLCC development in North and East Ayrshire, will be fishing in the same pond. As huge opportunities in the green and blue economies require retraining of a workforce and the development of a workforce stream of talent in the sector. Where is the workforce plan? We can't just will it to happen, we need to make a plan for it. The Scottish Government must build the apprenticeship pipeline, not restrict it. Now, I started by stating there's a huge impact that education can have on health inequalities, on welfare, on justice, on the economy, on an energy market, as well as the green and blue economies. And I have tried to cajole and encourage and push the government to join the dots, to support our FE sector, to match up careers advice with the fantastic opportunities in the local communities. Surely there must be an element of logic here. In welcoming the Minister to his new role, I urge him to consider what could be achieved if we recognise the opportunities in engineering and in that just transition in energy and trades and so on. To connect these up to education and careers advice, as I said, I have the greatest respect for Ben McPherson, and I hope as a Minister, I know he understands, he knows exactly where the problems are coming from, so hopefully will he be the one who finally delivers the obvious solutions for our students and for our businesses. Deputy Presiding Officer.
Thank you. I now call Bill Kidd to be followed by John Mason, up to 6 minutes. Mr Kidd.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and I welcome Ben, son of Fersen, to his new role. Presiding Officer, I welcome the opportunity to reiterate and summarise the aims of the bill and to offer my support to it at stage 1. In a nutshell, this bill will reform how funding and governance work across the tertiary education landscape in Scotland. I believe it represents a serious and timely effort to strengthen our system of post-school education, training and apprenticeships. It's about giving clarity, stability and fairness to learners, institutions and employers alike. And while there will always be areas for improvement, I strongly believe it deserves the support at stage 1 to get this thing moving in the right direction. We all know the present system is complex and at times fragmented. Funding routes overlap, responsibilities can be blurred and reporting is inconsistent. Learners and employers alike often face confusion when they should face clarity. On funding, it places a duty on the Scottish Funding Council to ensure the availability of apprenticeships and work-based learning, and gives ministers clearer powers to support training for employment. On governance, it makes important changes to how the Funding Council itself operates and creates a new apprenticeship committee, ensuring apprenticeships get the focused oversight they deserve. On student support, it clarifies the rules for Scots studying at private institutions in the UK, putting those arrangements on a clear statutory footing. In short, the bill simplifies, strengthens and steadies the framework for how Scotland supports learning beyond school. Financial pressures on colleges and training providers are also very real. By embedding financial monitoring and sustainability checks into statute, we will help protect institutions from sudden crises, giving learners and staff the reassurance that colleges and providers will remain stable and resilient. At the same time, we must remember that Scotland's future workforce needs to be adaptable. Our economy is changing rapidly with digitalisation, the green transition and an ever-growing demand for lifelong learning. This bill must help align post-school education with those wider priorities. And fairness is also at stake. Scots studying at private institutions should not face uncertainty about their support. This bill gives them the clarity they deserve. That being said, no bill arrives perfect. Our task on the committee is to take away what we have heard here today, alongside the evidence of witnesses and institutions, to further refine the bill, and I believe there are a few key areas to focus on. First, we must ensure that reporting requirements are proportionate. Yes, institutions must be transparent, but smaller or rural colleges cannot be buried under bureaucracy. Second, we must strike the right balance between flexibility and prescription. Strategic alignment is vital, but local providers must retain the freedom to innovate and respond to community needs. Third, we should seek greater clarity on student support rules, ensuring eligibility and appeals are straightforward and transparent. Fourth, governance reform must include the voices of learners themselves, particularly those from underrepresented or disadvantaged backgrounds. And finally, implementation matters. We need a phased and careful transition with regular review so that the reforms strengthen institutions rather than destabilise them. So looking ahead, education is one of Scotland's great assets. It's a bridge for young people into opportunity and a second chance for adults and a lifeline for communities seeking renewal. To keep that bridge strong, we must ensure that our funding and governance systems are not just fit for purpose today, but resilient for tomorrow. This bill, in my judgment, can provide that foundation. It puts apprenticeships and skills on the statutory map. It gives our Funding Council a stronger framework. It ensures fairness for learners, and it does so with an eye to sustainability and accountability. Yes, there is polishing to do, and I will work with colleagues across the chamber to make those improvements at stage 2. But the direction is sound, the intent is clear, and the opportunity is one we should not squander. So, Minister, let us seize this chance to provide clarity where there has been confusion, stability where there has been fragility, and fairness where there has been doubt. This is what the bill sets out to achieve, and that is why I support its principles at stage 1. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call the final speaker in the open debate, John Mason, up to 6 minutes, please.
Oh, I wasn't expecting to get as much as 6 minutes, so I'll certainly take an intervention along the way. I have to say I agree a lot with a lot of what's been said already, and my commiserations also to the Minister for being thrown in at the deep end on this bill. Now, overall, I would be supportive of the aims of the bill, especially because it will somewhat simplify the public body landscape in Scotland, even though we are not actually reducing the number of public bodies, as Stephen Kerr pointed out. And it could be argued that the government might have gone further by abolishing Skills Development Scotland altogether. It does seem that there is scope for developing the apprenticeship landscape, including rolling out a wider range of graduate apprenticeships, as well as foundation apprenticeships, which seem to be strong in some parts of the country, but not in others. As we took evidence at committee, I think I and others had concerns about the one-off costs for this bill, especially the pensions figure, which was shown in the financial memorandum as between £1 and £23 million. So I have to say I'm very pleased to see that the upper limit for that has now reduced to £8 million. However, at the same time, we have considerably new costs appearing. IT systems up from nil in the financial memorandum to £4 million. SDS restructuring costs up from nil to £4 to £8.5 million. Now, I find it remarkable that such substantial costs did not appear in the financial memorandum at all. It does make me wonder if it would actually cost less if SDS was just merged with SFC and so took on the existing IT. Yes?
Lewis Ross.
I'm grateful to John Mason for giving way. The point I was making in my earlier contribution, and it was echoed by Miles Briggs, given that the Finance Committee wasn't able to do a full report on this and asked the Education Committee to look specifically at the finance elements of this bill, given the massive changes that we've seen, but there is still further questions around the finance of this bill, does he think the updated financial memorandum, the new figures from the Minister, should go back to a committee, either finance or education, for further scrutiny?
John Mason.
Well, I think even the new figures we've got from the government, dated 19th September, some of them are provisional and still estimates. So absolutely, I agree that somebody needs to look at these figures in more detail, and that's very much a theme I want to emphasise tonight. From a Finance Committee perspective, Mr Greer and myself are still here, we have repeatedly asked for an improvement in the quality and detail of financial memorandums. Yet once again we see the significant costs not appearing in the FM at all. Now, perhaps fortunately for the Chamber, most of the Finance Committee are away visiting Lithuania this week, so members are not hearing the same message from all of them. And from an Education Committee perspective, these one-off costs were a major factor, as the convener and others have said, in our not endorsing the bill in our report. This is a lot of money, be it now only £21 million, for basically internal restructuring that is not affecting the front line. I am particularly intrigued that SDS should now come up with intentions to restructure and potentially make a number of staff redundant. That does suggest that it has not been operating in a very efficient way up until now. However, the government paper on revised costings, apparently quoting SDS, says, amongst other things, this efficiency will diminish. Well, I don't know exactly what that means. SDS has identified that there is likely to be the need for restructuring after the transfer has completed and taking at least 3 years, involving headcount reductions which might cost £4 million to £8.5 million. We certainly need to know more about that. The government says that it wrote to SDS and SFC in June, asking them to develop a plan for staffing arrangements. Now, that does seem a bit late in the day to me. SDS, in their response to the committee report, argue that they have been as helpful as they could be all the way along, but it does still appear, as I think George Adams said, it does still appear that they have been dragging their heels a fair bit. Having said all of that, I do welcome the government letter of 19th September, which is a lot more specific on costs than what we had before, albeit not the final picture. Concerning the SFC itself in relation to universities, my view is that it needs to be much more proactive in monitoring university health. From the evidence we received, SFC has largely been passive and has waited for universities to report any problems they were facing. Now, that is fine for a university like Queen Margaret, and we heard from their principal, Paul Grice. However, it has certainly not worked at Dundee University, where it seems that some senior figures did not understand their responsibilities, let alone flag up problems to SFC or to anyone else. So going forward, I would be wanting to see the Funding Council being much more proactive in this regard. Yes, universities are independent institutions and not in the public sector. However, if something goes wrong, as at Dundee, they clearly expect the public sector to bail them out. So we need to be picking up such problems earlier on. Therefore, overall, I am prepared to support the bill at stage 1 and will vote for it at decision time. However, this is the second time this week that we are being asked to give a bill the go-ahead when we are still very much in the dark about the details and the actual costs, the other, of course, being Liz Smith's outdoor education bill. I personally am not at all happy about this way of doing things, whereby we head into stage 2 with so much uncertainty. I am not guaranteeing that I will vote for either bill at stage 2, and I, for one, am looking for a lot more certainty before then. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mason. You rose to the challenge of completing the 6 minutes admirably there. We move to the closing speeches. I call first Ross Greer, around 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In opening, I laid out some of the general principles that the Scottish Greens do subscribe to in relation to this bill, but there are some specific points that I wanted to get into that I didn't have time for, and I'll do now. And the first is around data sharing, because it's something that came up very often in Stage 1, something that John Mason and I are familiar with on the Finance and Public Administration Committee, of being a recurring issue within the public sector. The huge limits on the sharing of public information that belongs to the public but is not available to them. And I've taken to a certain litmus test when I am trying to get a sense of whether a public body is effective at information sharing and making its public data available, and it's to simply check whether their own website is copyrighted or not. The Scottish Government leads by example on this. It operates an open government licence. Any information held on that is freely available. Everything other than the government's logo, its brand, is freely available for others to use as they see fit. Both of these public bodies, the Scottish Funding Council and Skills Development Scotland, have copyrighted websites. They are restricting even access to the most basic information that they have. Is it any wonder that they cannot effectively communicate with each other if they've gone to the unnecessary step of copyrighting their website? I would say that that's something where some clear ministerial direction would be of significant benefit. The David Hume Institute have estimated, I think, north of £2 billion is lost in value to the Scottish economy every year from the sheer volume of public data that is in fact not available to the public, and that makes processes more inefficient and more costly, makes public body costs far higher than they need to be because they're not sharing this information with each other. That is an easy problem to solve. It just requires a bit of ministerial direction. And I should say I recognise the upset felt by a number of individuals within Skills Development Scotland at what's being proposed here. It feels in many ways familiar to the upset within certainly the leadership of the Scottish Qualifications Authority in the process that we went through to replace them. And I do absolutely believe that far more substantial trade union engagement than originally took place is essential. I believe that more substantive engagement has taken place since the unions gave us their initial views, and I do welcome that. But on the part of senior management at SDS, I would urge some self-reflection, and far more self-reflection than we heard at Stage 1, particularly when they were confronted with the outcomes of Audit Scotland's review into their work and their relationship with the SFC. There simply was no engagement with the pretty scathing judgments that Audit Scotland came to there. There's one really striking example to me where leadership at SDS would have resulted in far more effective delivery, far more effective value for money, and that's, as George Adam and I think others mentioned, in the share of apprenticeship funding that is going to managing agents. We heard in evidence from one trade body that they take 40% of the funding per apprenticeship. That goes to them as the trade body acting as the managing agent. 40%, 40p in every pound that's not going to the apprentice or to the college. I've heard elsewhere that it is above half, in some cases as high potentially as 60%. Now, I believe this is capped in England. There's a cap on how much money the managing agent can take, and I think that SDS simply could have taken that kind of action long before now and didn't, but the bill is an opportunity for us to do so. Because for all the money the managing agents take, that is less money that is going to the apprentice, that is less money going to the college, that is less for the businesses who are involved in this system. The bill is an opportunity for us to get far better value for money, which would align with the government's medium-term financial strategy. It's also, let's be frank, an opportunity for us to maximise the amount of money going to our colleges in what's otherwise a really squeezed financial situation. Now, John Mason posed the question to me of is it worth £22 million, and that's still one that I'm wrestling with. There's a question here of is this one-off cost worth it for potential significant recurring value, better alignment, better value for money, more effective use of the money that is being spent. And I recognise that the bill splits opinion. I respect some of those who disagree but are arguing on the basis of quite specific concerns. Where I'm not at all convinced is in the arguments that some have made that if the system isn't broke, we shouldn't fix it. Well, Audit Scotland and Withers have shown what is broken about this system. I respect those who believe we can fix it without this bill, but I think some of the voices who have contributed to the debate outside of here to argue that everything is absolutely fine should reckon with the fact that it simply isn't. That is not the case. And I think that's why the Federation of Small Business say that this bill is a way to align the apprenticeship system with the needs of our economy. I just want to briefly pick up on a couple of things that were mentioned in the debate. Willie Rennie mentioned, and I think he was right to say, that Skills Development Scotland have a good relationship with employers. I would caveat that and say that's a good relationship with some employers. I think if you are part of the right trade body, a trade body that got its foot in the door some time ago, you have excellent access to that organisation and you get what you need from it. If you're not from one of those sectors, particularly if you're a small business that's not from one of the sectors with an assertive trade body that's got its foot in the door, you have a very different experience of Scotland's apprenticeship system. Willie Rennie and John Mason also both mentioned the £4 million for IT, the cost that has suddenly emerged late in the process. I'm deeply suspicious of that figure and the motivations that maybe came behind it. I cannot, for the life of me, understand how, when we're not creating any new functions, we're simply moving some systems from one organisation to another, there's a £4 million IT cost. Again, these organisations are both arms of the same government, presiding officer. That cost, to me, just simply doesn't ring right at all. This is a bill that, as I think I've made clear, the Greens are not completely sold on, but we do think there's a significant opportunity with. We don't want to miss that opportunity, the last of this session. We do want to see more alignment in the system. We want to see more access to apprenticeships for small businesses, and we want to see far, far better value for money. The bill could at least do some of that. Our list of amendments is growing, and I look forward to speaking to the Minister about those. That's why we're going to vote to progress this bill to stage 2, to give us that final opportunity to see if we can get that alignment, get that value for money before the dissolution of this Parliament.
Thank you, Mr Greer. I now call Daniel Johnson, again around 6 minutes. Mr Johnson.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. And if there are 2 points that I think united this chamber, first of all was the degree of welcome to the new Minister, and at times it felt like the front step of the Caledonian Hotel, that many welcomes were issued. Although I think the Minister will need to reflect that most speakers then went on to commiserate with the job that he has in front of him. He can make that what he will. Look, let me agree with the most fundamental point, is look, I think there absolutely is a need for change within the skills system. There's a need for it to do an awful lot more. The issue is, will this bill deliver that? And do we have clarity? Because there is, I think, the most fundamental objection that we have is there's a very real risk that without a roadmap, without a vision, this is a bill that will deliver a change in form without having any clarity around the change in function. And let's be clear, it is the function that we need to change. Now, I had an intervention, and I need to, in a sense, ask forgiveness from Jackie Dunbar for maybe pressing on a point that maybe I didn't make myself clear. A number of speakers articulated positions about the skills system, making the assumption that the skills system is about young people almost exclusively. And that is precisely where this change needs to happen. Because, yes, the skills system is vital for young people. It's really vital to give people the right start in their careers. But the change we need to see, given the changes that are happening in the economy, is a skills system that is just as much about giving people in the workplace the ability to upskill and reskill as technology changes how they do their job and makes certain industries and sectors obsolete. That becomes equally important. And frankly, I don't see where this is in this bill. As I said to Graham Day in private, and I will say again to Ben McPherson if we have the opportunity to speak, this government badly needs a route map. It needs whether it's a green paper or a white paper, because we don't have that clarity. But furthermore, I think there are fundamental objections to this bill. A skills system has to have industry voice, not just as a consultee, not just as part of ongoing engagement, but at the heart of its governance if it's going to be effective. Mr Kerr, I think, rightly pointed to the systems in Germany and Switzerland. And that's exactly what they have. In scrapping the Scottish Apprenticeship Board, and without any clarity on its replacement, and critically, without putting that at the heart of governance, the voice of, and I would just articulate clearly what I mean, not just employers but trade unions and well, to shape the content and direction, we have a major problem with this bill. Happy to give way.
Minister.
People have raised the question of the board through today's debate, and I appreciate my predecessor gave reassurance to the committee. I would be happy to give an undertaking to Parliament today to follow up on that and give further reassurance and information on that important point raised.
Daniel Johnson.
And I'm very grateful, because I think that is absolutely central. But I think the other point is the Scottish Funding Council the right vehicle, the right custodian to take this forward, both in terms of their track record, but also their other challenges. And I think Ross Greer was absolutely right to delve back to the Audit Scotland reports and some of the other work. Indeed, I did the same thing. Much of the genesis of this comes from the Enterprise and Skills Review undertaken in 2017. And that's why, to those voices saying that we need to get on with it, look, the urgency has been created by a lack of urgency for almost a decade now from the Scottish Government. Furthermore, when you look at that Audit Scotland work, there clearly was some issues between those two agencies, and maybe this bill sorts that out. But the other point that Audit Scotland made very clearly, it didn't need structural change. The Audit Scotland report was explicit, saying that changes in ministerial direction, but more importantly, clarity and oversight from ministers in terms of holding those agencies to account was what was needed to solve that. Now, you can amalgamate those agencies, and unless the government takes that oversight, that direction, in guaranteeing delivery, we could well end up with the same problem just within a single body, not two. But more importantly, and I think Willie Rennie made a very important contribution. This is not happening in the absence of other considerations. We have a university funding crisis. The Scottish Funding Council is having to look at that urgently. Does it have the capacity to take on board a very significant merger? But I would go further than he went, because it's not just a university funding crisis. I think much of the debate has been treating skills funding as a problem needing to be solved. But it's dwarfed by the colleges budget. And part of the problem we have is colleges spend is incredibly rigid. Anyone that has taken any amount of time to look at the credit funding mechanism for colleges will realise it is just not structured in a way to actually help the skills system. And that should be the debate that we were having today, is how do we fix colleges funding, and how do we make sure that colleges funding actually helps the skills system, not how do we merge the skills system with college funding. I think we've got the debate the wrong way round this afternoon. I'm very happy to go away.
Very briefly, Stephen Kerr.
He's making the point that goes to the heart of the lack of parity of esteem that there is in these different directions. And the bill does nothing for that.
Daniel Johnson.
We need a very clear framework about how actually you can study at university and acquire skills and apprenticeship, how you can study at college and do the same thing. And critically, the one bit of the skills system that the Scottish Funding Council have been responsible for, graduate apprenticeships, they have been static for a number of years. Not only that, they don't give those figures on an annual basis, and we are well behind England and Wales. And I think, just finally, I would say this, is that the Economy Committee, of which I'm now the convener, took a number of evidence sessions on skills. I have to say, the voice of employers was actually pretty clear. They were at best confused by the change, and at worst, actually outright rejecting of it. I think, including Paul Sheeran of Scottish Engineering Alliance, who said, don't do this. The things that we need to do are too urgent, and this will be a distraction. I think we should listen to people like the CBI, the Chambers of Commerce, Scottish Engineering. I think we need to stop and rethink this, because unless we are clear about what we want to achieve, we have that roadmap, structural change may well be costly and get in the way of the very thing that we're seeking to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Johnson. I call Ros McCall. Around 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. It gives me great pleasure to close this Stage 1 debate on behalf of the Scottish Conservatives, and I am going to add my warm welcome to Mr Macpherson on his ministerial post. Congratulations, and to thank Graham Day for his work in the role. When James Withers published the independent review of skills delivery landscape back in 2023, his message was clear. Scotland's skills system is too fragmented, too bureaucratic, too confusing for learners and employers alike. He called for a single funding body, for simpler pathways, and for more money to flow directly to the front line, where it can support apprenticeships, colleges and young people. Now, the Scottish Conservatives agree with that vision. Reducing duplication and slimming down bureaucracy is not just tidy governance, it's a financial prudency. It's a well-rehearsed argument within this chamber that money is restricted, and we're often asked to highlight budget costs that we would take if we truly want to release funding to help people back into work and to have apprenticeships in positive destinations. That would be an avenue that we on the Conservative benches would highly support. But, Presiding Officer, this bill doesn't live up to that ambition. What the Government has brought forward risks being a missed opportunity. It creates upheaval without a clear plan, that was mentioned by Daniel Johnson. It transfers responsibilities without transparent budgets. and it leaves unanswered questions about costs, pensions and staffing. So let's look at the record. HMRC data shows that employers have paid in at least £875 million into the apprenticeship levy since 2020. At this time, the government has spent £704 million on apprenticeships. That's a missing amount of £171 million. That's money that could or should have gone into training opportunities for young people. Meanwhile, 60 to 80 young people chase every apprenticeship place, and businesses tell us that demand is closer to 40,000 places each year, not the 20,000 that's actually delivered. And this was a point that was well made, I believe, by my colleague Brian Whittle, and it's shocking to hear there was 831 students all wanting jobs in sectors that were crying out for more staff, but were prohibited from taking places due to lack of funding. So if evidence is needed for the issues that we're facing in our tertiary education system, then I think that's it. Presiding Officer, if this bill was truly aligned with a vision for Scotland, we'd be seeing those levy funds transparently channelled into apprenticeships. We would see bureaucracy slipped away so that more money goes straight to training, not swallowed up in overheads. We would see a system built around learners and employers, not institutions and ministers. I thank the committee for the work they've done on this report, but the report does state that collectively they're not able to make a recommendation on the bill at stage 1, and it reserves its position on the general principles of the bill and warns the government that it doesn't know the full cost of the proposals. This has been well debated today. The pension liabilities for staff transfers could run into the tens of millions, yet no figure was offered. The Scottish Funding Council is already overstretched, and doubling its size overnight with the risk of duplication that brings is reckless without the clear resources and path. So we believe the principle is right, the ambition is shared, but the execution, Presiding Officer, has been found wanting. Excuse me. So I'm going to go to a couple of contributions that have been said today. And I want to say thank you very much to the Minister. I'm delighted to hear that there will be collaborative work as the bill progresses. And I want to just state to Mr McLennan that as the bill is going to progress today, that we will be working open to improve the bill at its further stages. And those doors have already been stated by Mr Briggs that they are open. And I welcome the comments from the Minister for collaboration with businesses, which we agree is absolutely essential. I have previously in this chamber mentioned that Fife College had to cancel a full year's course of social care due to a lack of care home and business buy-in based on funding. It's a lack of joined-up process that is adding to the issues before us, and we must address that. Bill Kidd did comment in his speech that it needed polishing. I'm just wondering if he would tell me what it is he thinks he's polishing, but that's maybe a little bit flippant. Miles Briggs asked a very good question as to why we're delivering 25,000 places when it's 40,000 that's needed. So I would ask, if we don't answer that question, are we sure that we're fixing the problem? Ross Greer pointed out on the dysfunctional relationship between the Scottish Funding Council and Skills Development Scotland, and that the government should step in to do that. So I guess my good question would be, is legislation the right way to do that? Legislation is about doing fundamental change to structure, and maybe we should be looking for the outcomes, and we should be looking at the legislation to do that. And Stephen Kerr highlighted quite eloquently, I thought, that this whole process should be demand-led, and I certainly agree with that. So, coming to my conclusion, Presiding Officer, the Withers Review gave us a route map to a simpler, fairer and more effective skills system. We should be seizing that opportunity, cutting bureaucracy, reducing duplication and putting money where it matters, and that's into apprenticeships, into colleges, and into places where people will drive forward Scotland's economy. This bill doesn't do that. It risks confusion, cost overruns and lost opportunities. Unless it's significantly strengthened, we're not supporting it. So the Scottish Conservatives will continue to champion the principle of reform, but one that works. A system that's simpler, leaner and built to deliver opportunity. That's what Scotland deserves, and that's what we'll fight for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms McCall. And I invite Ben McPherson to wind up the debate. Minister, around 8 minutes, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. And first of all, I just want to emphasise my thanks to all colleagues for their thoughtful and robust contributions today, and to those who contributed to the Stage 1 evidence and report. I really genuinely appreciate the feedback on this bill, and I will respond to as much of what's been said in the Chamber today shortly and through the course of my concluding remarks. With all that all considered, and with all the constructive criticism respectfully acknowledged, I do maintain that this bill could be an important and impactful step to reforming Scotland's post-school education and skills funding system. And I believe that Parliament should consider it further by passing it at Stage 1 today. As many emphasised, including Paul McClellan, there are many stakeholders who are supportive of the bill. And with respect to colleagues on the larger opposition benches, by not voting for the bill today, members are effectively voting against legislating before the end of this parliamentary term in this area. For learners, providers and employers... Yes.
Daniel Johnson.
I'll have to say apologies to Pam. I'm grateful for them to say, but would he recognise that Audit Scotland were very clear that the government didn't need to legislate in order to deliver the reforms that actually could be done? So to say that we're voting against legislation may be correct, but voting against change is not correct.
Minister.
I challenge that in that I acknowledge the Audit Scotland report and the points that it makes. However, there were a number of points that were made in the debate today that would require legislative change, including from the opposition benches who have just responded. So I say that in good faith, in that I want all members, if the bill does pass through Stage 1 today, to really engage on this as we move forward together. Because for learners and providers and employers, this bill does have the potential to make funding simpler, more flexible and transparent, so that the system meets the needs of Scotland's growing demand for a variety of skills. And this bill would lay the foundation for a stronger future for apprenticeships, as Bill Kidd raised, reforming Scotland's post-school education and skills funding system, and consolidate responsibility and funding for apprenticeships in the SFC, and therefore strengthen the SFC's governance powers as well, to provide more effective and oversight institutional sustainability, because the bill would enable better monitoring of the sector's financial stability, which John Mason raised, and I know this is of great interest to many members, and I would look to work on this issue ahead of Stage 2 to strengthen the system further. And I think it's also worth noting that the SFC would not be constituted in the way it is now if this bill was to pass, and I think that's worth bearing in mind. The bill would also provide a statutory definition of apprenticeship, as I've said in my opening remarks, and crucially in my view, this would help build much better parity of esteem, as George Adam, Stephen Kerr and Daniel Johnson rightly highlighted as a priority. Parity of esteem between career paths, boosting confidence for employers and learners alike. And let me emphasise again that this bill is the product of years of listening, gathering evidence and responding to a clear call for change, which has been expressed across the Chamber today. The Scottish Government has been listening, and I commit to doing even more so from today, including as I've been listening carefully in the Chamber. And I just want to respond to some important points that were raised by members. The convener of the committee raised the issue of modern apprenticeships, and just want to state that we will work with stakeholders to consider the delivery models for modern apprenticeships, including funding over the next years, and I'm happy to share more detail with the committee and Parliament in due course. The convener also rightly emphasised the situation with SDS staff, and I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the significant and valued contribution of SDF staff and what they've done over the years building Scotland's apprenticeship programme, and particularly their leadership and employer engagement. And I've experienced this firsthand as a constituency MSP. The bill wants to build on this strong foundation, and the Government is committed to that by transferring apprenticeships and national training programmes to the redesigned funding body in April 2027 if the bill was to pass. And others have raised the question of trade union engagement, which is very important. I agree. And that unions must be meaningfully engaged at every stage. They have a pivotal role in shaping the changes needed to implement the bill. And we want to ensure that their voices and those of all staff are heard. And that's why we've established a regular forum with trade unions to discuss implementation. And we will continue to engage with the public bodies involved, their staff and the unions at every milestone should the bill progress and become enacted. And the convener and others also raised the issue of costings, and I appreciate this. The figures that were provided as a follow-up by my predecessor to the committee's report are refined figures. I commit to continue to engage with the committee through this process and to probe the costs further. I do think we need to provide that reassurance, both in terms of IT transfer, implementation and pensions, with 2 pension schemes in play here. So I absolutely take those points on board. In terms of a number of other points that were made, Ross Greer talked about the need to consider the fact that this is an opportunity for an alignment and for better value of money. Willie Rennie rightly asked the question, what can't be done in the current situation that this bill will enable. If this bill is passed, in future SFC will have oversight over all provision and will be able to flex to employer and business needs, as many of us have emphasised, and innovation across provision in terms of what's right given the need, whether that's a short course, an apprenticeship. So that breadth is what the bill will provide. Do I have time, President Officer?
Yeah. Willie Rennie. I understand that in principle. It's tangible examples that we need, because everything's theoretical just now. We need something more tangible. Minister.
I appreciate that was the call to myself, and I've tried to a high level give that to Parliament today, but I'm absolutely content and enthusiastic about following up on that as we progress. Others raised points around the question of SMEs, and of course FSB have stated their support for the bill. I think we need to ask ourselves the question, are SMEs being catered for properly in the current system? And that is one of the strong reasons for progressing with the consideration of this legislation. And actually, whether it was Seah Boyack or Brian Whittle, there was, in relevance to what I said to Mr Rennie, there was questions about how do we provide specific focus to skills areas. And that's exactly what bringing all the provision together is intended to enable. I'm sorry, I'm a little pressed for time, otherwise I would have. There will, and just to answer a question, sorry, I should have, on SDS staff, there will be around 150 to 180 people that will be expected to move from SDS to SFC should the legislation progress. So I just wanted to answer that point that others have raised. I'll need to make some progress, I'm afraid. Just lastly, the committee highlighted the issue of widening access and the use of free school meals data as a measure, and Ross Greer referred to data. And I'm keen to make progress on this, and I'm cautiously optimistic that the bill provides an opportunity to make appropriate provision for data sharing. So that's another reason to continue to consider legislating in this area. A vote for this bill is a vote for significant change, putting learners at the heart of the system that works, a system that works for them, and in turn for employers, the economy and our society. It's for cutting through bureaucracy, improving funding flows and maximising public value. It's for a better joined-up system with colleges, universities and training providers all playing a vital role in delivering high-quality, future-ready education and training, and a chance to create a more efficient, more innovative and a truly collaborative system. Let's act together to take forward this bill and to support our learners and employers to better serve our people and our economy. And for all those reasons and more, I move that Parliament supports the bill.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes the debate on tertiary education and training, funding and governance Scotland Bill at stage 1. It's now time to move on to the next item of business. which is consideration of motion 18687 in the name of Shona Robertson on a financial resolution for the Tertiary Education and Training Funding and Governance Scotland Bill, and I call on Ben Macpherson to move the motion.
Formally moved.
Thank you, Minister. The question on this motion will be put at decision time. The next item of business is consideration of motion 19067 in the name of Shona Robertson on a financial resolution for the Schools Residential Outdoor Education Scotland Bill, and I call on Jenny Gilruth to move the motion.
Moved, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. The question on this motion will be put at decision time. And the next item of business is consideration of motion 19035 in the name of Shona Robertson on appointment of commissioners to the Scottish Fiscal Commission, and I call on Shona Robertson to move the motion.
Moved.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. The question on this motion will be put at decision time. There are 4 questions to be put as a result of today's business. The first question is that motion 19027 in the name of Ben Macpherson on Tertiary Education and Training, Funding and Governance Scotland Bill be agreed. Are we all agreed? No. The Parliament is not agreed, therefore we'll move to a vote and there will be a short suspension to allow members to access the digital voting system.